We received a call from the custodian at a church who asked us to provide a quote for the larger boiler feed system. We sold the original tank and boiler 10 years ago. I knew it was sized properly. Why do you need a larger boiler feed system? I asked. Our boiler tech said this tank is too small and I need 3 quotes, he said. I agreed to a visit the next day. When I arrived the following day, the floor around the tank was wet. Did you blow down the tank? I asked, and he shook his head. It floods every morning, he said. Looking at the gauge glass on the tank, I saw the water level was a few inches lower than the overflow tapping. When asked about the water level, the custodian said, it floods every morning around 9, but it's okay the rest of the day. Greetings and welcome to Boiler Room Detective. I'm your host, Ray Wolfhard. I also noticed the boiler pressure was set between 6 and 8 psi. Why are you running the boiler at that high a pressure? I asked. He looked at me like I asked a silly question, pointed to the 30 psi pressure gauge, and answered, the boiler pressure should be in the middle of the gauge. Everyone knows that. I figured that was another battle for another day. If the tank was flooding all the time, I would suspect the internal float valve was defective or the incoming water pressure was too high. The float valve has a float inside the tank that feeds water if the tank level drops and shuts the valve off when the water level rises. It's like one of those old-time toilet floats. Sometimes the float leaks and fills with water, constantly calling for makeup water. The incoming water pressure to the float should only be around 20 psi. Feeding the float valve with the building city water pressure could force the valve open and flood the tank. This tank flooded around 9 a.m. every morning, but was okay the rest of the day. Flooding only once a day adds an additional wrinkle to the troubleshooting, and the fact that it occurs around the same time is puzzling. I like the challenge. Troubleshooting steam problems requires a more holistic approach than a hydronic system. I often joke in my seminars that the techs need to file away their hydronic knowledge when diagnosing a steam problem because it will lead them down the wrong path. Our boiler company said the tank is too small. He suggested replacing it, the custodian said. Is it only too small at 9 a.m., but the correct size for the rest of the day? I wanted to ask, but didn't. The custodian's only relaying what his expert told him. When sizing a boiler feed tank, there are usually 3 options to choose: 10, 20, or 30 minutes. This is the estimated time it takes when the steam leaves the boiler to when it returns as hot condensate to the boiler feed tank. If the building is small with lots of vertical piping, it may take 10 minutes to return. Conversely, if the building has long horizontal piping runs, I would use 20 to 30 minutes. This can actually be timed if you have the patience. Once the boiler starts to steam, you can see how long until the boiler feed tank or condensate return pipes start to feel warm. If the piping is partially plugged or sagging, the condensate return may be delayed. Clogged or restricted piping is typically found on the condensate pipes. You can try flushing the mud from the return pipes by connecting a hose to the far end of the return pipe and opening the drain valve before it goes into the tank. Make sure the sludge doesn't end up in the tank because it'll ruin your boiler feed pumps. I considered this was a problem, but again, it would happen all the time. What I discovered was a combination of the partially plugged condensate pipes and one more thing. The system had a night setback control. The night setback temperature was set for 55 degrees, while the day setting was set for 70 degrees. This allowed all the pipes to cool and put an additional load on the system when the controls were switched to day. Most of the heat was used to warm the pipes, and the boiler needed makeup water to meet the thermostat's demand. The condensate would finally return 2 hours later and flood the boiler feed tank. To prove my theory, I suggested we eliminate the night setback for a week and see if the tank flooded. The custodian agreed, and I called a week later. The tank didn't flood. He then told me the pastor hired his current boiler company to replace the tank with a larger one. A larger tank would have resolved the immediate problem, but it would also have masked the cause. If you found this video helpful, give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more expert advice and tips. Thanks for watching. If you'd like to contact me, my contact information is here. In addition, I have 2 websites. Brewingwithsteam.com is focused on steam systems for breweries and distilleries. It includes a monthly blog about steam issues inside a brewery. My other site is fireiceheat.com. It's my company's website and shows some of our capabilities. My boiler books are available on Amazon. My technical articles are included in these industry publications. Thanks for stopping by Boiler Room Detective, and I'll see you on the next case.